Ryan Foster inherited a remote cabin from his reclusive uncle Victor, planning to sell it quickly. When he arrived with his dog Cooper, he found something disturbing: a perfect ring of dead, withered trees surrounding the house, while the forest beyond thrived. On the second morning, Cooper licked something on the bark and immediately collapsed, vomiting violently. The soil smelled chemical, and Ryan discovered his uncle's shed filled with unmarked powders and obsessive notebooks. What Victor had been doing in his final months would force Ryan to make an impossible choice. Ryan Foster never imagined inheriting property would feel so unsettling. At 24, he owned a remote cabin in the woods. His uncle Victor had left it to him just over a year after adopting him. Victor had always been distant. Their relationship consisted mostly of brief phone calls and awkward silences. But Victor had no other family, and when he passed away, Ryan became the sole heir to everything. The plan was simple: drive to the cabin, assess the property, and list it for sale. Ryan figured he could wrap everything up in a week. He brought Cooper along for company, his loyal dog. A week in the countryside would do them both good. The drive took longer than expected. When he finally reached the clearing, Ryan stopped the engine and sat there for a moment, taking it all in. The cabin looked weathered and abandoned, but that wasn't what caught his attention. A perfect circle of dead trees surrounded the entire house. The ring extended about 4 meters in every direction. Past that circle, everything thrived. Green pines reached toward the sky. Birds sang from hidden perches. But inside that ring, nothing lived. The contrast was striking, almost unnatural. Ryan shrugged it off. Trees die all the time. Insect infestation, disease. Maybe Victor had neglected the property. Nothing a landscaping crew couldn't fix. The second morning changed everything. He let Cooper outside while he made coffee, watching as his dog bounded toward the tree line. Cooper approached one of the dead trees and stopped. His tail wagged as he sniffed something on the trunk. Then he licked it. Within seconds, Cooper stumbled backward. He began vomiting violently, his whole body convulsing. He examined Cooper frantically. What had he licked? He looked at the trunk. There was residue on the bark, something sticky and dark. The smell hit him hard. Chemical, sharp, wrong. Ryan carried Cooper back inside and gave him water. He waited until Cooper seemed stable, then grabbed a flashlight and went exploring. The property had a shed behind the cabin. Inside, Ryan found bags stacked against the walls. Unmarked bags filled with powder. The chemical smell was stronger here. But what really caught his attention was the locked metal cabinet in the corner. He grabbed a crowbar and forced the cabinet open. The lock snapped and the doors swung wide. Notebooks, dozens of them, stacked neatly on every shelf. Ryan pulled one out and opened it. Formulas covered the paper in Victor's tight handwriting. What had Victor been trying to do? Ryan gathered several notebooks and brought them back to the cabin. Victor wrote about setbacks, about warnings from neighbors, about people calling him reckless. He insisted they didn't understand. Ryan needed answers. He drove to the nearest village and asked around until someone directed him to Walter, an elderly farmer who remembered Victor. He explained that Victor had been obsessed with creating a miracle fertilizer. Walter and other local farmers had warned Victor repeatedly. Pouring homemade concoctions around living trees seemed dangerous. But Victor dismissed every concern, insisting they lacked vision. Ryan thanked Walter and drove back, his mind churning. He needed hard evidence. He took soil samples from around the dead trees, careful not to touch anything directly. He packaged them and sent them to a local agricultural lab, paying extra for rushed results. While waiting, Ryan searched the property more thoroughly. Cooper refused to go anywhere near that area now. Ryan kept the dog inside, pacing nervously. 3 days felt like 3 weeks. Ryan barely slept. Victor wasn't a bad man. His intentions seemed genuine, even noble. He had wanted to help, to contribute something meaningful. But good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes. On the 3rd day, a courier arrived with the lab results. Ryan tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The soil was saturated with nitrogen compounds and phosphates. Levels were dangerously high, far beyond what any plant could tolerate. But here was the surprising part. The compounds weren't toxic to humans or animals. They were organic and biodegradable. Ryan didn't understand. He called the lab technician immediately and asked for an explanation. The technician told him something unexpected. Victor hadn't been trying to poison anything. He had been trying to help the trees grow. Everything he used was organic, natural, designed to nourish plants. But he had applied far too much, far too fast. The trees had been burned by nutrient overload. Cooper had gotten sick from ammonia released by the decomposing organic materials, not from poison. Victor's stubborn refusal to listen to warnings had destroyed the very thing he was trying to save. The technician had mentioned something else. The land could recover. With proper treatment and time, new growth would return. It might take years, but nature had a way of healing itself. Ryan sat on the porch and opened one of the notebooks again. Victor had spent his final months here alone, working obsessively, convinced he was on the verge of something great. Just a stubborn old man and his impossible dream. Now Ryan held that dream in his hands, reduced to pages of frantic notes and a ring of dead trees. He had a choice to make. He could sell the property as is and walk away, or he could stay. He could bring in experts, treat the soil, plant new trees, repair what his uncle had broken. Cooper barked from inside, already feeling better. Ryan took a deep breath and looked at the forest beyond the dead ring, where life continued without pause. His uncle's legacy hung in the balance. Would it be remembered as destruction, or could Ryan somehow turn it into redemption? And you, what would you have done in Ryan's shoes?